Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lydia Joy, and I'm just hanging in there in this winter weather we've been having here in the Northeast. It's been interesting getting my workout, shoveling. Hope y'all are holding steady in this. We're in the middle of it. We're right in the middle of the winter. We got a little ways to go, but we can make vitamin D from the sun again here where I am, so that's fun. And we are gaining some light back, so that's also fun. Today, I want to walk you through an Instagram carousel that I read that perfectly captures the problem with modern wellness in the information age. Now, if you were with me in the last episode, I talked about the shadow side of wellness culture. I think this is worth exploring for a bit. So today, I want to get into it a little bit more because people send me posts all the time, or clients tell me about things they've read all the time, asking my, 2 cents or my perspective or my thoughts, or, kind of like want me to review the post or whatever. Or a lot of times what might happen too is like people are, basing a whole new theory on something they saw on Instagram or in some kind of online space, right? And just so we're clear, I'm not encouraging anyone to start DMing me content to fact check. Please do not do that. I probably won't read it. I have plenty of close friends who still do it, and I'm like, y'all. But today, I am going to kind of just talk about how to develop your own filter. Because if you don't have your own good filter, you become the filter, and that is exactly how people end up overwhelmed, second guessing themselves, losing trust in their own bodies. And, uh, again, the overtreatment, the information overload, the incoherence, the way people get pulled into doing way too much, or maybe they're not even doing too much, they're thinking too much about what they think they should be doing. Just as equally exhausting, right? And there's like zero containment or context for their own life. So, today, I want to take a specific example of that shadow and talk it all the way through with you, because bad information is not just everywhere, it's super easy to perpetuate. And in the same way that we are surrounded by processed food that looks like food but isn't actually nourishing, we're surrounded by processed health information that looks like education but isn't actually wisdom. And this is one of the main ways people lose trust in their bodies. This like oversimplified certainty presented as authority, it's wrapped in some kind of transformation story. Maybe there's a sales funnel attached to it, right? So I'm going to use this podcast as a case study for us all. I think you're going to find it interesting. I'm not trying to take anyone down. Like, I'm not trying to defame a person, okay? I don't know the human being behind the post that I'm about to talk about. I don't know them at all. I don't think they're evil. I don't think anything about this person. But I want you to see how quickly something can sound scientific while being wildly reductionistic. Okay, so it's the information being relayed, not the human that's under critique here, okay? And the post is from a fitness influencer with a pretty decent following. And the very first slide claims this: vitamin D decides whether the calories you eat become fat or muscle. And then it tries to back that claim with science, including a PubMed ID number. Like it just says PMID and then the number. And then, of course, their own little mini micro personal story about how, after they supplemented for a year, after they found out they were deficient, they gained strength and lean mass while minimizing fat gain. And it may all be true that happened for that person. Okay? I'm not debating that at all. But this is where I want us to pause, because the sentence that says vitamin D decides, and this podcast isn't even about vitamin D, y'all. Y'all know, if you've been around with me at all, I have a lot of education on vitamin D and how we've done it wildly wrong. But it's a good example because it's this exact kind of one variable, one nutrient narrative that just collapses people into confusion, into chasing the numbers and, false certainty. Okay. This one's actually a big one that we've done this around for a really long time. So I want to break it down about what's being implied, what's being left out, how to think like an adult in the information age with your body, your biology, and your discernment intact. So I'm going to read the post exactly as it was presented, slide by slide, because, every little nuance matters, okay? All right, so let me go and pull up this post. All right, so vitamin D decides if the calories you eat turns to fat or muscle. A 2024 study found vitamin D redirected surplus calories to muscle growth instead of fat storage. And then it says PMID 387666160. I actually did pull it up and read some of it. So if you want to do that, go for it. Then the next slide says high doses of vitamin D caused a hormonal shift, altering how calories were utilized. Suppressed myostatin hormone that blocks muscle growth, increased leptin sensitivity, improving fat metabolism, boosted resting energy expenditure without changes in food intake or activity. Up to 50% of the world's population is vitamin D deficient. Symptoms are subtle: fatigue, mood swings, poor recovery, muscle weakness. Higher risk: women, older adults, those with pigmented skin, and certain health conditions. Deficiency leads to muscle loss, fat gain, and higher disease risk. I was low on vitamin D and didn't know it until blood work uncovered the deficiency. Since supplementing last year and eating more calories, I've experienced a boost in strength and lean body mass while minimizing fat gain via DEXA. And then there's like this little graphic that has measured date, total mass pounds, lean tissue pounds. I don't really know what value that any of these markers have. In my opinion, it means almost nothing. But anyways, optimal vitamin D levels for most active adults. Research shows 60 ng/ml for good outcomes in glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity, body fat regulation, muscle and strength. Athletes and women in fat loss phases may benefit from levels up to 100 ng/ml. And then here, okay, there's a little graphic. I guess it's ages and little optimal markers and all this stuff. Oh no, it's optimal, upper safe levels, toxic. Okay, and deficient. All right, so it's a little graph, all right, on the slide. And then it says again at the bottom PMID. So these are PubMed articles. I looked them all up. And I could read the numbers to you if you want. If you actually want to go look them up, just message me later. I'll send you the links. But I looked each one of them up and read each one of them. I'll get into that in a minute. To ensure optimal vitamin D levels, get your 25 OHD levels tested. Consider supplementing if you're low. Work with a healthcare provider or use a reputable service to track your status. I use LifePack, link in bio. Optimizing your vitamin D levels could reduce body fat storage, support muscle growth, boost your metabolism, all without eating less or training more. Drop a fire emoji if you want the max strength form of vitamin D I take. Okay. All right, guys. Let's get into this because I think this kind of information hijacks trust. Now that you've heard the whole thing, I want to slow it down because the problem here, as I said, isn't vitamin D, although that is a big can of worms. It's not even this particular influencer. The problem is the pattern. This is exactly how bad health information spreads in the information age and why it's so destabilizing to people who are genuinely trying to take care of themselves. Let's start with the very first move. Vitamin D decides whether calories become fat or muscle. That sentence alone should make your nervous system pause. Not because vitamin D does nothing, but because, and I've said this forever, no single nutrient decides anything in the body. No nutrient works alone. Doesn't stand alone. It can't do anything as a solo act. That's not physiology. It's a story. And stories move faster than biology. The body doesn't work by any one molecule, anything, deciding outcomes. It works through systems talking to systems. Nervous system, endocrine system, mineral balance, liver function, sleep, stress load, food intake, training, recovery, life context. So when someone collapses all of that into one heroic variable, what they're really offering you is false certainty. And false certainty feels incredibly soothing when you're overwhelmed. That's why this kind of content spreads. Now let's talk about the studies, because this is where people might get intimidated, right? A PubMed ID on a slide doesn't mean what most people think it means. Most people see a study citation and assume, like, okay, this is proven, or this is settled, or all right, yeah, this applies to me because, it's in the science, right? But when you actually look at what's being cited here, it completely falls apart. The first study linked is a preprint. It's not peer reviewed, and it's based on animal models. That alone matters. Okay. I mean, animal studies are not inherently useless, but they're just hypothesis generating, not clinical conclusions. And they don't translate cleanly to human bodies living real lives under real stress with real histories. Okay. I don't want to be compared to that. Do you for real? Like, seriously. And the other studies listed, they don't even support the claims being made. they're complete. I'm sorry, I have to laugh. They're completely unrelated, completely misapplied. And some have nothing to do with vitamin D at all. This is a really important point because, like, most people don't actually read studies. They simply trust that if a study is cited, it must be relevant. And that trust is being exploited. All right. So, I couldn't believe it when I went and read them. I'm serious, you guys. I was like, what on earth is happening right now? It's like, wow. Then comes the most seductive part of all, the personal transformation story. Okay. The person says, I was low in vitamin D. I supplemented. I ate more calories. I gained muscle. I minimized fat gain. Okay. This is where people get hooked because stories feel human, right? But this is also where the biggest logical error happens. She didn't just take vitamin D. She ate more food, she trained. We don't know what else she did, right? We have no idea. We don't know anything else. We don't know any more factors. And so attributing the outcomes to one supplement, that's called single variable attribution. And it's one of the most common ways people get misled in wellness culture. And real physiology doesn't work like that. And when people try to replicate these stories without the same context, without the same reserves, without the same capacity, they don't get the same result. They just get confused. Or worse, they think they're the problem. And there's another piece, okay? So after the dramatic claim, after the study citations, after the personal story, we get that little slide. I know I did a bad job of explaining it, but it was like optimal ranges, right? We get the optimal ranges, and there was a little graph, a little bar, and then you should test. You might be deficient. Here's a product I take. Okay, this isn't even education. Not even close. Not even anywhere near close. It's just a sales funnel dressed as science. Okay? This person, I don't know anything about that. I'm not trying to make this person a bad person, but it does mean this information is not neutral. And if you don't know how to spot that structure, you might end up outsourcing your judgment again and again. Or you might take it in as like, man, so many people are saying they got these great results when they did this thing, right? Um, Whoever sounds the most confident that day or 5 times in a row, like you're going to believe it, right? Like it's somewhere inside of you you're going to be tempted to be like, "Man, what is the deal?" And that's the deeper issue that I want you to hear. Content like this doesn't just spread misinformation. It trains people to like distrust their own bodies. Maybe even believe their symptoms mean something is wrong. Chase numbers without any context. There's like no context here, by the way, in this story that I read. To override signals instead of listening to them. To look for salvation in the next supplement. I mean, that's what people do. They keep looking for salvation in the next supplement. And over time, that erodes nervous system safety, and people end up with massive supplement graveyards and, protocol fatigue and, a constant sense that they're behind, deficient, or missing something. Not because they are. I mean, they might be. It's possible. Especially if they attribute the symptoms that they have that are the result of the deficiency that's being told, right? Like, but the information environment is wildly incoherent. Wildly incoherent. So before we even talk about vitamin D or any nutrient, this is the skill that actually matters. Learning how to pause. Learning how to question somebody's certainty on the internet. Learning how to spot reductionism. Learning how to notice when something sounds simple because it's incomplete. This is just like basic how you protect your body in the information age. I want to talk about what actually gets erased when we reduce the body to one molecule and why this way of thinking keeps people stuck, even when they think they're doing everything right. Okay, we've done this with so many things, the single nutrient narrative. And I remember the time when I just was like, you know what, you guys, I can't talk about a single mineral by itself again. I can't do it. It just feels wrong. You know, I mean, sometimes we need to talk about it, but like, I just started to realize I can't do it anymore. And I think it fails people when we do this too much. Even if we need to educate on things, there's a much deeper problem underneath this way of posting or educating, and it's way bigger than vitamin D. It's because single nutrient narratives fail because human bodies do not work in the isolation that they're being presented. They never have. Like, if you think about nature, 0 nutrients exist alone in a piece of food, like a piece of fruit. Like, it's not just a magnesium fruit, right? Like, it's got so much going on. And there's no vitamin that ever acts by itself at all. There's no signal fires without a response from something else, multiple something else's. Everything operates inside a very complex and beautiful orchestra of an ecosystem. But we've become reductive, and modern wellness keeps pretending the body works like a spreadsheet. Low number, add input, number goes up, problem solved. That logic might work in a lab, but it does not work in a living system. Because changing a number on a lab does not mean you've changed the conditions that created that number in the first place. And I want to talk about the illusion people fall into, because someone gets a lab result, it says a nutrient is low, so they take the nutrient, maybe the number moves, maybe it doesn't. And if it does move, they assume, great, I fixed it. But what actually happened is much simpler and much less meaningful. Like, you added an isolated input, the marker responded, That does not mean the system reorganized. It doesn't mean the body integrated it. It doesn't mean the underlying physiology shifted. It just means the bloodstream registered a substance. That's not healing. That's accounting. And this is where the whole model breaks down because nutrients don't do things on their own. Just because we study them on their own doesn't mean they do things on their own. And vitamin D is a perfect example. It isn't even a vitamin in the traditional sense. It's a hormone like signaling molecule, and in its natural context, it's produced through sunlight interacting with skin within a body that's also receiving circadian cues, infrared light, seasonal rhythm, movement, fresh air, minerals from food and water. And so when you extract that one piece and put it in a pill, you remove it from the orchestra that gives it meaning. So now you have a signal. Without the full context, it evolved to operate within. And the body has to compensate. And that compensation shows up as increased demand for other things, other minerals, the increased liver workload, altered calcium signaling, stress, perhaps, on an already depleted system, which is why so many people feel worse when they chase one nutrient aggressively, even when their labs improve. Your body isn't malfunctioning, it's just responding intelligently to an unnatural input. And this is also why the idea of fixing deficiencies through isolated supplementation is so flawed, because deficiency is not just a lack, it's a relationship problem. A nutrient could be low for so many reasons. It could be because it's not being absorbed, it isn't being retained, it's being burned up or burned through too quickly, it's missing its cofactors, your nervous system is just in a pattern of stress. Your liver can't metabolize it properly. Your body's prioritizing survival elsewhere, right? So when you chase the nutrient instead of the context, you miss the point. And worse, and worse, and worse, you even can create new imbalances while trying to correct the single one. Oh man, I'm sorry, I have to laugh. If once you start to see this, it's like obviously, right? And so this is how people end up like over supplemented, under-regulated, confused by mixed signals, and convinced that their body is like complicated or broken, when in reality, it's just being treated incoherently. So the truth no one's saying out loud enough yet is that if one nutrient could override physiology, we would have solved chronic illness decades ago, but we haven't, because the body doesn't work that way. It works through networks. It works through timing. It works through sufficiency, through safety, through coordination, right? Like you cannot isolate your way into wholeness. And the more aggressively anyone tries to force outcomes with single inputs, the more the system resists. Not because the system is like just stubborn, not because your body's like, like, again, people think like there's something wrong with their body, it's resisting. But it's not. It's just protecting itself. It's adapting. It's smarter than our own mind's logic is. Right? And this is why, like, I don't chase numbers. Like, I'm not like, people ask me all the time about the hair test, and they're like, well, what if I've had low manganese 5 times, 5 hair tests, like, and they get all caught up on one marker, like obsessed with wanting to fix the marker. And I'm like, tell me about your life. Like, tell me what's going on. Like, tell me more. Like, why do you think having this low marker is hurting you? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't want to worship a lab in that way, right? The lab is a tool, and we are taking these tools way out of context. Okay. And we don't want to stack nutrients hoping something finally works from this come from. It's important to restore the conditions that allow the body to organize itself. Because when the ecosystem is supported, nutrients stop acting like wild cards and they start behaving the way they were always meant to. And that's when things actually shift, right? You know, it doesn't, no, there's no perfect supplement that's going to like do this miracle thing in 1 year for you. I mean, some people might find a supplement and they feel great and it helps something in them. And there's truth to that, but like the way it's being framed, no, that's just not reality. It's more about the system getting more of what it needed. Maybe that person who wrote that article was not eating enough food and they actually started eating enough food because they said they ate more calories. I mean, that alone could make you feel wildly better, especially if in the fitness world, if you're like trying to have, a bodybuilder. It was a bodybuilder. And I can imagine they probably previously, at some point, reduced caloric intake to get the muscle, blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes, right? They said in their story, I ate more calories. I'm going to bet that was the thing that did more than the vitamin D supplement, even if the marker was fixed. Do you know what I mean? A fix in that, like, I'm saying that loosely, by the way. And I think that this can backfire in women a little faster. And I don't know if we're talking about this enough either, because like this single nutrient high dose number chasing model, it doesn't work for anyone, but it tends to backfire faster and more dramatically in women. Because our physiology is more responsive to disruption because we're not static. We cycle, we shift, we adapt across months, seasons, pregnancies, stress loads, life phases, our hormonal transitions. So when you introduce an aggressive, isolated input into a system that's, meant to cycle, like especially for long periods of time, the ripple effects can show up sooner. Not always immediately, but inevitably. So, and one of the biggest lies in wellness culture, oh man, and it's just like I've had to like reroute how I speak publicly. It has taken a while. I'm not saying I say everything perfectly all the time, but I will say I try to be very careful what I say anymore these days because of the people that I sit with. Man, I tell you what. But one of the biggest lies in wellness culture is this: if it helped that person, it should help me. Right? But people are being held up as proof, like influencers, fitness competitors, biohacking personalities. Like, these people's lives are wildly different than your life, my friend. Like, they might be living inside of a much more highly controlled situation than you even are aware, like you don't know how they're living their life. Um, you know, and their lives are typically more optimized. They're optimized more for the outcome. They're also, honestly, a lot of them, they're about the appearance and the performance. Let's be honest. That's their job. They might not be doing all the same things you are, raising children, recovering from burnout, navigating trauma physiology, managing years of sleep debt or whatever. Like, I don't know. We don't know. So if you're a woman in real life and you're trying to copy an approach without the same context, support, recovery, bandwidth, or reserves, the cost is going to show up somewhere. And a lot of times it can be quietly at first. And this is especially true with fat-soluble hormone-like substances, because I'm talking about vitamin D now, because unlike water-soluble nutrients, you don't just pee out the excess. You store it. Your body redistributes it. Like, if you get more than you need, it's got to do something with it. Also, the way that we process a supplement version versus food or sun is totally different than a supplement. So there's a whole piece to that puzzle, like I've talked about in other episodes. But like, you know what I mean? There's so many layers to it. You can alter signaling pathways over time too. That's another thing we're not talking about enough. And if the rest of the system isn't resourced to handle the shift, Like, you don't have the right minerals on board, your liver function, your adrenal capacity, nervous system is, maybe in a different position than that person. Like, you know, your body's going to compensate. We want cookie cutter wellness, but I promise you that is not what will serve you, my friends. And anytime we have to compensate for something that we do in excess in a way that our body can't use and we don't really need, it can show up in all kinds of places. You can have like inflammation that wasn't there before. You might have new sensitivities. Might be hard to tell what it's coming from. Blood sugar, digestion, sleep, anxiety, all those things could potentially pick up if something is being shifted in the wrong direction. You know what I mean? Um, and a lot of times people don't connect those changes back to the thing that they were told was helping. So they assume something else is wrong. So then what do? Maybe they add another input and another and another. And this is how people end up layering interventions for years while slowly drifting further and further from regulation and the truth. And what I've seen over and over again across more than a decade of work is this: no one deeply repairs their system by isolating one nutrient and pushing it hard for a year. They may feel better temporarily. They may see a lab number change. They may even experience a short-term win. But when that approach is repeated and when the same logic is applied again and again, it eventually creates imbalance somewhere else, especially in women who are already depleted in chronic health patterns. This isn't theory. It's cleanup work. It's what people arrive with after the honeymoon phase ends. And this is why, like, we have this herd mentality. It's the herd mentality, the club mentality. Like, it's like a herd mentality around wellness, and it's dangerous. The copying, the copycat behavior. I call it copycat wellness. I've been saying that a lot lately. The hero narratives, the unexamined authority, the idea that questioning is a weakness instead of a skill, right? I mean, so many women are taught to distrust their own responses and defer to whoever looks the most confident. So instead of asking, like, how does this land in my body? What else might I need to know? Or what else does this require? What might this actually cost me over time if I do it wrong? You know? They just think, oh, I'm obviously doing something wrong. And that question alone keeps the vicious cycle alive. Okay? Here's the grounded truth, everyone. Okay? Women don't need more certainty. They need better discernment. We don't need quick fixes. We need approaches that respect pacing, context, and long-term coherence. None of us need to be rescued by any single nutrient. We all need systems that stop asking our bodies to compensate endlessly. Okay? Our bodies are adaptive. Our bodies are amazing at always trying to figure out, well, where's homeostasis now? Where's homeostasis now? And that doesn't mean you're always trying to get to some perfect Shangri-La, like it doesn't exist. Homeostasis means your body trying to come back to its center, right? With what it's given, with the conditions that are there. So it's only going to come to a level of homeostasis that it's capable of because of what it's dealing with, right? It's always responding very, very intelligently to the conditions it's given. Okay? And when we restore the conditions thoughtfully, intentionally, slowly, with discernment and relationship, we don't need hacks. I don't want to hack my health, do you? Like just that word alone. It's like, here's some tape, here's some glue, here's some duct tape, here's some staples, here's a hack. Here you go. See if you can hold yourself together. Oh my word. Anyways, seriously, when we when we just trust that our body is doing the best it can, always, 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 always. Like, sometimes I think we just need to sit with that for a while, because then we realize our responsibility is to steward our lives, because that's how we stabilize. That's how we rebuild. That's how we remember to trust ourselves. And this is why my work exists. I want to leave you with this, because I don't want to, there's nothing to fix. There's no more takeaways, and definitely no nutrients to chase. What I hope you hear in this episode is that the problem isn't that your body is complicated. The problem is that you've been handed models that cannot hold complexity and then blamed when they collapse under it. You've been given isolated inputs instead of context, certainty instead of discernment, massive intensity instead of pacing. And a lot of times what happens when those things don't work, you might be left thinking that you are the issue. What's missing for most people isn't effort per se. It's not always discipline either. And it's not even always intelligence per se. It's appropriate guidance inside a coherent framework, one that understands how systems actually adapt and how long-term patterns unwind in real bodies. And that's why my work exists. I don't work by suppressing symptoms or chasing any single lab number. I had somebody write to me the other day about and telling me their lab number on an Instagram post. And I'm like, really? We've resorted to this? Like, we've resorted to telling people on the internet a single lab number we have and asking for advice. Like, this happens all the time. And I'm just like, slow it way down, people. Like, there's so much context missing. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I sit with people who are like literally so stressed out by this. And I don't like start with any kind of a rigid protocol or like a major supplement stack or anything like that. I don't think that can truly stick, because a lot of times it can essentially override someone's body in the name of healing. And I don't want to do that. So I work with the ecosystem, and that means seeing the whole picture as best as we possibly can. Obviously, we're not going to see everything. Understanding the person in the life they're in now, what the body is currently prioritizing, right? And then just like sequencing the support appropriately and pacing change according to the person so it can actually integrate. So if you've been dealing with longer term patterns, things that haven't fully resolved despite trying, air quote, all the right things, which none of us are doing that, by the way. It's impossible. It's such a funny phrase to say, but it's what people are saying, you know. This is exactly where deeper support becomes appropriate, because, you know, I like, we don't have to do it all on our own. It's a lot to navigate, you know. And honestly, you guys, I don't think that more information is always what people need. I think having someone who has, more of an outside perspective that can remain objective, that's skilled, that can help you organize what's already going on, right? So right now, the primary way to work with me is through my Minerals and Microbes program. It's designed for people who want clear insight without pathologizing. The support that just really respects timing and capacity for you. And a collaborative process that helps you learn to trust your body again. So I use two foundational tools. I use the hair tissue mineral analysis and the Biome FX, so we can look at the mineral piece of the puzzle, your microbiome. These are not to be diagnostic per se, but like just kind of maps to give us a grounded lay of the land, so we can move forward coherently rather than reactively. And then from there, obviously, we're going to work together with the pacing and context and relationship aspect of this work that is so gravely missing elsewhere. So if that resonates, you can find all the details in the link below in the show notes. If you have any questions, you can email me just to make sure it's the right fit. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. That's okay too. I hope that this episode helped to sharpen your filter. Because honestly, you guys, this is just like things are gonna speed up and pick up. And if you enjoy reading things online, that's great. But like, you're also going to be bombarded with a lot of stuff that's going to require you to have really good discernment so that the noise doesn't get to run your system. I mean, I even talk to practitioners who are like ready to quit and leave because it's like, holy moly, there's just too much chaos out there. So we all need a little more discernment. And, I thought having this conversation out loud would be helpful to many of you. So I hope it was, because I think that alone is a form of healing, quite frankly. So yeah, we don't sit in the little circles anymore and philosophize about things. And nowadays there's too many things to that could like be bombarding our conscious, like, on the regular. So all right. Well, with that, my friends, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. I will see you next time. Stay wild and stay well.